Brandon Moreno is the first former world champion of 2025 to win a fight night main event. Overall, UFC Mexico was a pretty fun fight card. Instead of these sissies and the dancers that we had at UFC London, the UFC Mexico card brought a whole bunch of action, a lot of people coming forward and getting into good old-fashioned fist fights. My name is Angelo, this is We Want Picks, and I'm going to recap and react to the entire UFC Mexico fight card. Before we talk about the fights, let's talk about the bets. Overall, a spectacular night. I had two bets that missed, and frankly, only one of those should have missed. Christian Rodriguez, that bet missed. That is what it is. I have never, ever in my life picked a Christian Rodriguez fight correctly. The Vinc Pichel plus 3.5, that absolutely 100% should have hit. We'll talk about that fight in more detail, but basically what that bet means is I bet the spread. All I needed from Vinc Pichel was one round on all three judges' scorecards, and frankly, that was a 29-28 across the board. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but Bet Sam's Slam of the Week hit. The safety parlay back on track. Overall up 6.5 units, a 31% ROI, and that is a combined 31% ROI from your boys. Big Ange did some very real numbers. Overall, UFC Mexico was a spectacular fight night. UFC Vegas 105 is next week. That should be a great fight night as well. The website has already flipped. The website already has all of the UFC Vegas 105 picks, the bets we have so far, all the tools, everything is ready to go for the next event. If you want to check out every single one of those picks and bets, just go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top. You'll unlock every single pick bet tool that we have to offer and hopefully get a line of the line movement. We have an app as well. Everything we do is available inside of an app. Just go to your app store, search We Want Picks, download the app. You'll get push notifications every time we place a bet, every time we place a pick, and all of the things. Here's the events you will unlock if you go to WeWantPicks.com right now. Unlock not just next week, UFC Vegas 105, but you'll get UFC 314. And then you'll get the UFC Fight Night with the Khalil Roundtree and Jamall Hill main event. That's UFC, what is that? That's not Kansas City. Is that Iowa? Des Moines? I don't know. I don't know where the hell that one is, but you will unlock every single pick, bet, and tool for every single event for $10. $10. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. Let's go ahead and talk about these fights. The fight night opened up with a very close call. A very close fight. This was a good back and forth fight. Overall, MarQuel Mederos was the better striker, the cleaner striker, the more accurate striker. He did get taken down a few times. He spent an entire round defending his neck because Hubbard climbed on his back and was working in a rear naked choke. This was a razor thin fight. I think this is the only fight where you could say the judges may have gotten it wrong. Overall, extremely close. Anybody saying robbery just doesn't understand what the term robbery means. Because this was a very, very close fight. The clearest round was definitely for Hubbard, but there was an argument to be made that MarQuel won the first and the third round. In the third round, he almost finished Austin, rocked him, had a whole bunch of trouble. In the first round, he was the cleaner striker, touching him up, making things happen. So I was perfectly fine with this decision. I recognized that it was close. Austin was moving forward. Austin was getting takedowns. Obviously, he spent the entire second round on MarQuel's back. But we don't score fights as an overall fight. We score fights by round. There are 3 rounds, sometimes 5, and we say who won each individual round, and we total up those points. So if you're looking at this fight round by round, I can understand saying MarQuel won. If you look at it holistically, who was closer to finishing? Well, Hubbard was close in the second round, MarQuel in the third. So overall, this was a very close fight no matter how you slice and dice. We have some other fights on this card, not as close if you look at the fight as a whole. But overall, this was razor thin. Razor thin. So I don't have a problem with this decision. MarQuel did what he was supposed to do. Stepped up on short notice. Fought a close guy at elevation who was just moving forward, staying in his face. I will say, though, MarQuel definitely needs to work on that takedown defense. You should not be getting taken down that easily by somebody like Hubbard. Hubbard's not like a phenomenal wrestler. You should not be getting taken down that easily. But good fight overall. Wasn't a barn burner, but definitely was like, okay, these scorecards might get interesting. This might be a weird scorecard kind of night, but it really wasn't. This was the only time that you could dispute the overall winner of a fight. A couple of scorecards later we'll talk about. Then we had the first leg of the safety parlay. We had Jamall Emmers winning by knockout almost immediately. Obviously, we bet on Jamall Emmers early before he ballooned up to this massive favorite that he was at the close, and that's the benefit of becoming a premium member early. That's the benefit of having the app for the push notifications. So you're not waiting till Saturday to check out those odds and lose all that value. You get it nice and early. Jamall Emmers was the guy that all week long, the entire narrative I had in every single video that I broke this fight down, I said sometimes 1 + 1 = 2. Sometimes it's literally just that simple. And the one was Jamall Emmers has power in his hands. The other one was that we have a very chinny Gabriel Miranda on the other side of that octagon. And then the solution to that math formula is that Gabriel Miranda is going to get knocked out. And that's exactly what we got. But it wasn't without some nail biting. Listen, I saw a losing safety part. I saw it. We were in the neighborhood. If you can't tell, I might be a little flushed in the face. This is how my day went. We woke up. I got everything ready for UFC Vegas 105. I get all the articles ready on the website. I get everything ready for next week so that as soon as the event is over, the website full-blown flips to the next card. That's just the experience that premium members have come used to. So I usually spend the mornings on Saturday getting ready for that flip. Then my daughter had a soccer game, so we go to the soccer game. Then we came back, we had a block party for a neighbor that moved out and was back for the weekend. Then we went from that to dinner. I have been out in the sun since 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It is 10:15 at night. We've been drinking. We're in the sun. We're doing all the things. And I'm in the lawn drinking with Bo, Bo from the vlogs. And we're watching the fights on my phone. And all I see is Gabriel Miranda having the back of Jamall Emmers early. Have him in that crooked rear naked choke. Thank God that was crooked because I was like, here we go. This is, what an absolute joke. This is the year. This is ridiculous. Luckily, Jamall Emmers was able to survive and get it done. I got to tell you, this was a weird week because all week long, Jacob is sending me videos. And they're just literally the videos are, don't be a pussy. That's what these videos are. Just different motivational videos that all end with don't be a pussy. And I took that as, you have your gut, go with your gut. And all week, it's Jamall Emmers is definitely the first leg. Second leg, I don't know. Here's a few things I'm thinking. And Jacob was like, but Gabriel Miranda, Jamall Emmers commits, throws too hard, Gabriel will take him down. And that is how this fight started. But ultimately, I pulled the trigger. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be a pussy. I'm just going to go with my gut here. And when he was in trouble, I was like, oh my God. And if we rewind a little bit, and he shows up at the weigh-ins with a septum piercing, I was like, oh my God. He is an emo. Oh my God, Jamall Emmers is emo. So I'm never betting on him again. The septum piercing is nerve-wracking. The fact that he got taken down so easily because he overcommitted is nerve-wracking. He does have power, but it's almost... he almost trusts the power too much to the point where if he wasn't going to knock out Gabriel, we were going to have some problems because he was getting Gabriel rocked. He almost had Gabriel pretty much knocked out on his feet and then would clinch against the cage to the point where the commentators were like, what the hell is he doing and why? So a little nerve-wracking, but ultimately it was still a first-round knockout. They just got to cut Gabriel. At this point, this sport is too advanced. It is too far along to have guys that are one-trick ponies. We are too far into this sport to have people who are jiu-jitsu nerds. It's just, that's it. We're not... We can't have that anymore. It's 2025. What are we doing? Then we had Rafa Garcia and Vinc Pichel. This is the only other time on the fight card where I disagreed with the scorecards. Rafa Garcia won this fight. I'm not disputing that fact. And I'll tell you how this fight went. First round was definitely Rafa Garcia's, right? He was moving forward. He landed the bigger shots. He was landing pretty heavy, moving forward, just bombing. Rafa Garcia is not very technical, not very good, so he's just bombing. A couple of grappling scrambles, but it almost took Vinc a little while to get his old man legs going. Second round, those old man legs were going, and he was touching Rafa up. He was landing clean. Rafa's eye was swelling shut, and not the one that got a poke, the other one. So Vinc Pichel was having a ton of success. Clearly won that second round. I don't know how you don't score the second round for him. It was very clear the second round was a Vinc Pichel round. Third round was more Vinc. The beginning of that round was all Vinc. Vinc was doing well. Vinc was staying busy, not as busy as you'd like, but busy enough to win the round. Then Rafa, because he is a dog, sort of digs in, starts landing clean to the body, throwing to the head, just moving forward. Rafa stole that round, right? I know I'm saying Rafa instead of Rafa. Just fucking deal with it. Sensitive. Dude, I had people complaining about the subject line of the last bad takes video. Dude, you have nothing to worry. This is your life. that you'll spend 8 minutes in a Discord debating a subject line, the title of a video? That's how meaningless your life is? So I'm going to say Rafa, and you're going to get bent out of shape, but we'll both know it's Rafa. Got it? Not that big of a deal, pal. What is a big deal, though, is that these judges, not one, but two of them, said that Vinc Pichel didn't win a single round in this fight. That's absurd. Not only did he definitely win the second round, an argument could be made that he maybe won the first or the third. Certainly debatable enough to not have two 30-27s. I bet the plus 3.5 here. It was a good bet. Obviously, it didn't cash, but that's the judge's fault. They fucked it up. Here's a look at the overall fight stats. Oh, okay. Vinc Pichel landed more total strikes. Vinc Pichel landed more significant strikes. Vinc Pichel lit up Rafa's legs. 2 minutes of control time, big deal. Who gives a shit? This is absurd. 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Dude, it should have been 3 29-28s. If you said it was a split, I would have less of a problem with you saying it was a split decision for Vinc Pichel, for Rafa Garcia, than saying 2 30-27. Like, we're closer to Vinc winning this fight outright than we are to Rafa clearly having 3 rounds. That just seemed nuts to me. Obviously, the bet missed. It is what it is. We made enough money everywhere else that it didn't matter. But that scorecard bothered the shit out of me. We are at a point, though, where maybe Vinc Pichel is too old. Because, frankly, the win was within grasp. It's on him. It is Vince's fault he did not win this fight. He was definitely in better shape than Rafa was. Rafa was exhausted. He just gutted it out. But Vinc slowed down. He doesn't typically slow down. He slowed down a little bit, and he didn't get his volume going. He wasn't pumping the jab. He was having success, but he wasn't doing enough. He wasn't moving enough. His coaches were literally yelling, move your feet. Keep your feet underneath you. Move your feet. What are you doing? Get out of the mud. Because he just wasn't his typical self. And honestly, that's what happens when you get old. You get a little slower. You don't quite have the gas tank. You don't quite have the reflexes. So Vinc Pichel's tough as absolute shit. But he was never an unbelievably skilled fighter. What he always was gritty, dirty, grimy, in phenomenal shape. He still was in great shape. Not quite as gritty, but gritty enough. The issue was he just couldn't keep the volume going. He was a little bit too slow, and Rafa just gutted it out. That's the difference between being 30 years old and 42 years old. I do think Rafa won. I do not agree with the 30-27 scorecards. And what I believe here is we got exactly what we thought we would get. There's only one person that thought that Julia Polastri would win. Just one person. And I told that person, dude, she's not winning. And that person doesn't listen, right? That person insists that you're wrong. And I'm going to convince you you're wrong by just sending you random clips of Lupi doing dumb shit. Like that's some sort of surprise. We know Lupi does dumb shit. We all know that. I've talked about it many times. Lupi does dumb shit. This is the Lupi circle of death. We did the circle. You start with, she's so good. She's unbelievable. She can wrestle. Her sister's an Olympian. She's got great striking. Then you go to her losing a horrible decision because she made bad choices. And you go, oh my God, she's stupid. She keeps doing dumb shit. This is ridiculous. This is brutal. What the hell's wrong with her? Then you go to her next fight. I'm never going to pick her again. You can't trust her. Remember the dumb shit she just did? Then you go to, she is pretty good though. She is pretty good. Then you full blown go to, I'm picking her. I'm betting on her. And that's the full cycle I did. And I picked her and I bet on her. I didn't bet on her. I bet Jacob. No official premium bets, but Jacob and I had a $500 bet on this fight. So I won. He lost. And Lupi looked like Lupi. She came out. She boxed the shit out of Julia. She was the better boxer. She was the better grappler. She caught a kick. She picked up Julia, power bombed her on the ground, just dominated the first 2 rounds. Then things got interesting because between the second round and the third round, Lupi told her corner, I have to take a shit. She said, I have to take a shit. And here she was holding in a shit. So in the third round, while holding in a shit, Julia Polastri took over. Julia Polastri was lighting her up, landing clean, landing big, making stuff happen, pushing forward to the point where we're like, oh my God, is Julia going to somehow finish in the third round here? Ultimately, she didn't. Lupi was tough enough to A, not shit her pants, and B, not get finished. Couple of takeaways. There was an Instagram video after the fights. Lupi did, in fact, take a shit. She confirmed. She did a video. They were taking the braids out of her hair. She said, I took a shit. We're good now. So she took her shit. Also, we've confirmed that Lupi is very good when she wants to be. And she had a perfect game plan. She grappled just enough to get Julia nervous. She striked just enough to get Julia settled there. Then she would go back to the grapple. It was a great game plan. And the other thing we know now is that Julia is good. Julia is tough. She's gritty. The fact that she had a third round rally after getting power bombed in the first round, very clearly losing 2 rounds, but still poured it on, didn't quit on herself. Julia is good. Julia is not a quitter. Julia is a gamer. Lupi is just very, very, very good. With that being said, she is still Lupi. Lupi might be the new Kevin Holland, where they're good. They're a good fighter. But they'll always do just enough to not get cut. So Lupi won this fight, looks spectacular, other than having to take a shit and lose in the 3rd round. I don't know what her next matchup's going to be, but depending who it is, she might lose that matchup. And then right when she's about to be cut, which you could have argued maybe today she was about to be cut, right? 2 losses in a row. If she loses the 3rd, that's a problem. She'll have a spectacular performance. Kevin Holland, just a few weeks ago. A couple of bad losses in a row, right before he's probably going to get cut if he loses. Pulls it out, has a pretty good performance. Lupi is that person. So we can't forget the Lupi circle of death. Just because she won this fight and just because she looked great doing it doesn't mean she won't do some dumb shit in her next fight and ruin it for everybody. So we have to keep that in mind. Then we had a pretty good, fun back and forth fight between Mel Costa and Christian Rodriguez. I agreed with this scorecard. I thought Mel Costa won. I would have scored it for Mel Costa. I was just sort of hoping he was going to get the same homer courtesy that they gave to Rafa Garcia. If you gave Rafa Garcia all 3 rounds in his fight, you don't do a little bit of courtesy for Christian Rodriguez? I get it. He's not like a Mexican, but he's Mexican enough. He's Mexican enough. He's not from there, but he's Mexican. So, didn't quite get that courtesy, but frankly, he didn't win this fight. This was an unbelievable back and forth fight. This is very similar to what we talked about earlier when we talked about the MarQuel Mederos Austin Hubbard fight. When we talked about that fight, we talked about, well, if you score the fight as a whole, not individual rounds, maybe you look at it a little different. And this fight's similar because the first round and the second round were very, very close. Ultimately, it seemed like C-Rod had slightly better striking, but would engage in the grappling. He would get takedowns, but then once it hit the ground, Melk would win the scrambles. Melk would snatch things up. Melk was looking for finishes on the ground. C-Rod never looks for finishes. He did have a really tight Darce at one point in this fight. Like C-Rod doesn't typically look for finishes, though. But in the 3rd round, C-Rod dominated that round. That was a very clear round for C-Rod. He poured it on, had some control. The most dominant round in this fight was the 3rd. And if you look at the fight as a whole, right? If we don't score individual rounds, if you didn't say round 1 and 2 go to Melk 3, okay. If you don't do that and you look at the fight as a whole, you may say, okay, over the course of 15 minutes, C-Rod was closer to finishing this fight. He had just more dominance overall. And if you didn't do individual rounds, maybe you would have scored in his direction. But we do individual rounds. That's how scoring works. Round 1 went to Melk. Round 2 went to Melk. Round 3 went to C-Rod. This was a very fun fight. Mel Costa's good. Mel Costa's good, and it's funny because this entire week I said the same thing over and over. I said I have never picked a Christian Rodriguez fight correct. And to this day, I have still not picked a Christian Rodriguez fight correct. He's smoking prospects he shouldn't smoke. He's winning decisions he shouldn't win. Then he gets submitted by Julian Erosa. Okay, fine. That dude's dangerous, true vet. And then he comes in here, has the opportunity to beat Mel Costa, and lays an egg. He was taking Mel Costa down almost whenever he wanted to. Phenomenal foot sweeps, dumping him on his head. But then he would go to the ground and engage with him just to get swept, just to end up on his back and lose those scrambles. On the feet, he's having success striking. He's landing clean, just to then do the sweep and end up on the ground, just get reversed. And it just ended up being too many small bad decisions. There was not an overall horrible game plan. There wasn't like one massive bad decision. It wasn't like last week when we had Pooja Tamar almost knock her out and then fall her to the ground, pull her, just squeeze out of an armbar just to put herself back in and get submitted. It's not like that. It's not like Christian made one stupid decision, but it was a lot of little stupid decisions. Followed him to the ground. Engaged in the cage where he was just reversed and held instead of just stepping away. Those stupid decisions will, over time, get taken care of. Comes with the fight IQ, comes with the experience. Christian Rodriguez is good, but let's talk about Mel Costa. He's very good. Mel Costa's finding ways to win. Because I don't think we've seen Mel Costa just absolutely smoke anybody, right? He's got finishes, but even those finishes, he's just finding himself in positions. So Mel Costa's just a dog. Mel Costa's willing to scramble on the ground. He's willing to strike in the feet. He's willing to do whatever he needs to do. And he's just sort of letting fights happen. He's not dictating anything. He wasn't the one with a specific game plan. It was very clear Christian's game plan was let me get takedowns. But Mel Costa made stuff happen. Mel Costa got it done. And good for him. I thought this decision was correct, and I got no problems with it whatsoever. Then we had Ateba Gautier with a pretty quick knockout over an incredibly durable Jose Medina. All of us, me included, picked Ateba. We all said Ateba should win this fight. He hits like a freight train. He's insanely powerful. It's all the things, right? He's fast. He hits all the things. He's the better fighter. But all of us also said, or at least most of us said, the problem is this is at elevation. We've seen Ateba slow down. We know how insanely durable Jose Medina is. We watched him get beat 3/4 to death in his last fight. He survived. No problem. That wasn't the case in this fight. Ateba just pieced him up on the feet, ultimately got it done. I mean, he hit this dude hard as hell a few times, and that was the end of it. We had a knockout at like 3.5 minutes in the first round. Ateba hits like an absolute freight train. It's hard to say if the cardio situation, he didn't gas, but it was a 3.5 minute fight. Like, I don't know what we could have possibly been able to figure out from there, but he got it done. He got it done quick. He was a massive favorite. So, I mean, all the things that were supposed to happen in this fight happened in this fight. And now Jose Daniel Medina, who's basically just building a career off being a punching bag, probably going to be out there. He's the next James Yontop, right? He's James Yontop. Goes in there. You throw him against a prospect. You watch the prospect beat the absolute shit out of him. You move him on to the next guy. That's what's up with Jose Daniel Medina at this point. Ateba, I'm curious to see what happens if they give him a wrestler, somebody who makes him work, because he obviously has insane power. He obviously has very good striking. I want to see what happens when he works. I want to see what happens when his arms get a little tired, if he can gut it out, if he can grind it out, if he can try to make things happen. But for now, looks absolutely spectacular. I don't know what they have in store for him next, but I actually think they should just give him a whole bunch of wins. I've talked about this before. Give some of these guys easy fights. Build them up. I don't care if their records are hollow. Build them up. Get that highlight package going. Get him 7 knockouts in the UFC because he beat a bunch of nobodies. Get the highlight package going. But Ateba for now looks really good. Then we had Kevin Borjas. And he beat Ronaldo Lazy Boy Rodriguez. Here's the thing. I told you guys all week long. I've been picking Borjas since day one. I bet on Kevin Borjas. And you know I'm not the underdog guy. But I still was like, dude, he's going to win this fight. So I bet on him. And he did win this fight. And he won the whole fight. He won the whole fight. Here's the thing. People like Lazy Boy. People like Ronaldo Rodriguez. And I get it. He's flashy. He's exciting. And he is so durable. This dude, Kevin Borjas, landed the cleanest right you'll ever see. Ronaldo Rodriguez basically drops unconscious, does a backflip, pops right back on his feet, and he's like, let's go. It was like a video game. It was insane. It was like he tripped, right? Like he tripped and just had a really cool, it's like he parkoured backwards off a building. Parkour. Whoop. Lands on his feet, no big deal. But that's not what happened. He got blasted in the face. His brain shut off for a half a second. That's why he fell down and flipped backwards to begin with. This was insane. And that wasn't the first time that Kevin Borjas blasted the shit out of him. And he just did not care. It didn't matter. He just kept moving forward. Jump kick, spinning back fist, moving forward, bombing away. Ronaldo Rodriguez's durability should be admired. His creativity should be. He's a fun, exciting guy, but I do think he sucks. He got a homer decision in his last fight against Ode Osborne. In this fight, the decision was correct. He got beat to shit. He's just durable and fun, but he's not good. What I do think they should do, because he's durable, because he's fun, I think they should do what I just mentioned they should do with Ateba. Give him some winnable fights. Let's build up his record. You need fun, exciting guys. Every fight he's ever going to be in will be exciting. You need people like that. Don't use him up so he has 3-4 losses in a row and you have to cut him. Get him a couple of wins. Build him up a little bit. Convince us he's good even though we know he isn't. And then throw him out there to get smacked around. Kevin Borjas is good. I said the whole week. He's the better striker. He's more technical. he can win this fight. And that's exactly what he did. He looked good. He got the leg kicks going. He got that right hand going. And ultimately, he just turned into a right hand kind of guy. I mean, when you almost have somebody knocked out in the first 2 minutes of a fight, you're just going to keep bombing away looking for that right hand. And that's kind of what was happening there. But this was a great fight. This was an exciting fight. I loved watching this fight. It was a ton of fun. Obviously, I was on the right side of it bet-wise, which is always a nice little cherry on top. Then we had the doctor. The doctor is in. David Martinez is a doctor. He's an actual doctor. And anytime you get somebody with that sort of intellect and that high IQ, you can assume they're not going to do stupid shit. And we weren't in this fight long enough to see if he was going to do something stupid or not. We were in this long enough to know that he's got speed and he's got power. And those sort of go hand in hand because I don't necessarily know if it's just big, huge one-punch knockout power or if it was the speed that was making it look so powerful, but he was beating Saimon to everything. Saimon moved forward. Saimon engaged in a fight. He wasn't run away. He wasn't scared. But David Martinez just lit that dude up, cracked him a bunch of times, made it happen. They almost got out of the first round. It was at the end of the first round that this fight ended up finishing. But the reality is David Martinez is good. I'm looking forward to see how good he is, what's next for his career, but he's a good fighter. And we know he's smart. So this could be interesting to see when we get somebody like him, 12-1 now in his career, as smart as he is. If he makes the right decisions, if he ties things together, has good game plans. He's obviously physically gifted. He's tough. He's durable. He's a gritty guy. I don't know what's next for him. I am curious to see what's next for him because right now, great prospect. His odds ballooned all week, and I said that from the day one. When I filmed the videos, I film my videos Sunday mornings. The first meaningful video in this space. So if you don't subscribe, hit the fucking subscribe button. The only meaningful video in this space dropped that early. And I said him and I said Jamall Emmers are both going to have crazy odds by the end of the week because they are both fighting very finishable people. I said Simon Oliveira sucks shit. And I said Gabriel Fly Miranda has no chin whatsoever. And both of these dudes can get the finish. And people will start to figure that out as the week goes on. And they did because these odds ballooned up big time. Much wider at the end of the week than they were at the beginning of the week. But David Martinez, obviously very good. And we'll see what happens when he starts to put things together and gets a little tougher competition. Then we had a pretty fun back and forth fight. Raul Rosas won this fight, right? He won this fight by dogging. The striking looked phenomenal early. Then he started to grapple. He ended up in a couple tight positions. Here's one of them. He ended up in a couple really tricky. It was like a Peruvian necktie. There's a couple different wild scrambles, a couple weird positions, some darces, he was in trouble more than one time in this fight. But the striking looked very good. Then he started grappling. Ultimately, very clear win for Rosas. A judge gave the third round, or maybe all the judges. I don't know if it was 1, 2, or all 3 judges gave the last round to Vince Morales, as they should have. Because even though he was taken down, he was closer to finishing that fight in the third. He was having some success. A couple of these chokes were very close. So let's talk about both sides of these chokes. On the Raul Rosas side, very composed. For a 20-year-old kid to be in that kind of trouble, very composed. He didn't panic. He worked his way through those positions. He ended up on top. Cleaned his way through. You're obviously nervous watching it because these are clearly tight positions, but he didn't panic. He wasn't nervous. He got through it. But I also feel bad for Vince Morales, dude. Vince Morales, I'm going to pull up his fight history on my other screen here. Vince Morales is good. He just has had shit luck, dude. He can't find a win in the UFC to save his life. He just lost to Raul Rosas Jr. He lost to Elijah Smith in a very similar fight in his last fight. He lost to Taylor Lapilus on short notice to get back into the UFC. Before that, 5 regional wins. Before that, he's in the UFC. Loses the decision to Miles John. Loses the decision to Jonathan Martinez. He's fighting such good guys that he's losing these decisions, but then he goes to the regional scene and just murders people. So Vince Morales, clearly far too good for regional MMA. Not quite good enough for any sort of meaningful UFC level fights. And it's just such a trash spot to be in if you're Vince Morales. Because what they do, going to cut him again, and then he's going to go back to fighting for $3,000, smoke a bunch of people, maybe get called up for a third time on short notice to lose to somebody way too good. I hope the UFC does him a favor. I hope the UFC recognizes that this guy's losing close fights. Give him a cusp fighter. Put him and some other cusp fighter, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but give him and some other cusp fighter on a losing streak, put them together. And one of them can keep their job and the other one goes home. I feel bad for Vinc. He's a very good fighter that dogs things out. He's never going to quit. He's always going to be in your face. Like, it just sucks that he can't get real wins at this level when he is this good. Excited to see what happens next for Raul Rosas Jr. Again, the composure was great. The striking looked unbelievable. He didn't stick with it too long, but his striking looked better than his grappling, frankly. The hands are improving. He's only 20 years old. There's a big future for this kid. Then we had a showcase fight for Edgar Chairez. You see the submission here. Not a great picture if you're CJ Vergara or his loved ones. But Edgar Chairez put on a show. He dropped CJ, had that dude rock the shit, then basically forced the submission. It was actually kind of funny to see because he could have TKO'd for sure, but he was like, no. Jumps on him, wraps it up, gets the submission. And I'm glad I ended up throwing him in a parlay because early in the week, I was like, CJ's a pretty good dog. But I sat here and I very honestly said, CJ's somebody I'm high on in the past. CJ's somebody that I'm confident in. CJ's somebody that I picked many times before. But I just feel like I have too much bias here that I shouldn't because Edgar's pretty good. And then as the week went on, that bias went away. I rid myself the burden of CJ Vergara fights in the past. I picked Edgar. I bet on Edgar. And ultimately it delivered. His hands looked good. He looked powerful. He got the submission. Edgar Chairez is somebody that could potentially make something happen at some point. And he's had some tough fights as well. He hasn't had the easiest road in the UFC. Josh Van's a tough-ass fight. Tatsuro Taira's a tough-ass fight. And everybody in between, he's winning. So I think Edgar Chairez could potentially be very good. He's long, he's lean, he can strike, he can grapple, he's pretty dangerous. So Edgar Chairez, curious to see what's next for him. CJ's probably going to be cut at this point. He's an exciting guy, but that's a couple finishes in a low. That's multiple losses in a row. They probably got to cut him, rebuild yourself, and come back because he's exciting, but there's plenty of exciting guys at 125 pounds. Then we had the co-main event of the evening. This is another one. Dude, I had a great week. All my narratives were spot on. I had a great freaking week. Not just the bets and the picks, but the narratives were right there. And I was all over Manuel Torres to the point where as soon as he flipped to an underdog, I bet on him. And the public dog was Drew Dober. Drew Dober was like plus 150, worked his way all the way up to like minus 120 favorite. Because everybody's like, it's Drew Dober, it's Drew Dober. But what was my whole narrative? My whole narrative this week, starting on Sunday, was what does the UFC do? The UFC takes quasi-stars who you like, who are aging and starting to lose, and they run them into the ground, and that's what we have here. We have a Drew Dober who was knocked out just a few fights ago. A Drew Dober who in his last fight was just getting absolutely smoked. A Drew Dober who's slowing down, whose chin isn't quite what it used to be. And we have a young, exciting kid in front of him who's very long and very talented. Manuel Torres is going to piece him up and get it done. That's exactly what happened. I didn't necessarily think Manuel Torres was going to finish Drew Dober the way that he did, but he finished Drew Dober. And then Drew Dober contested it. So basically, if you didn't see, Manuel Torres pieced him up on the feet, had a ton of success, had him rocked. Drew Dober's hanging on a leg, and it looked exactly like Jailton Almeida versus Curtis Blades last summer, where Manuel Torres is just hammer fisting the side of Drew Dober's head. Just boom, 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 boom. 15 unanswered shots. I think it was literally 12. Unanswered, huge, heavy shots to the side of Drew's head as he just holds onto the leg and has his head bounce. So yeah, the ref stopped it as he should have. And Drew's like, what are you doing? What am I doing? I'm making sure you can walk in 2 years. Holy shit. Manuel Torres looked great. He looked great. I had no doubt he was going to look great. I bet on him. And again, I'm not the underdog guy, but here I am picking and betting on all these dogs. Drew Dober, this is what's going to happen to Drew Dober. This is the UFC formula. His next fight's going to be tough as shit. They're not going to give him somebody about his age. They're not going to give him somebody that he could finish. They're not going to give him another aging vet. No, they're going to give him another young killer who's going to throw another nail into that coffin. And that's the unfortunate reality of UFC matchmaking. We're going to use you up. We're going to keep you around as long as we can. And as soon as things aren't going well, we're going to use you to build the next generation. We all just watched Manuel Torres light his ass up. Now we all like Manuel Torres. So it works. It works, but at what cost? Because now one of our favorite fighters is just going to get absolutely decimated. He's going to lose 4 of 5 and then retire too young. I mean, that's the cycle. That is what UFC does to their stars. And that's what's going to happen. And then we had the main event of the evening. And I didn't caption the fight here. I left it at fight caption because you could tell any story you want with this fight. The story could be Brandon Moreno's working his way back to a title. The story could be Steve Erceg's an overrated hack. The story could be Brandon Moreno is actually pretty sloppy. There's a lot of different stories you can tell from this fight, but ultimately, we got a pretty straightforward 5-round fight where Brandon Moreno was landing the bigger shots, or at least attempting the bigger shots. His awkward striking style will duck his head and just bomb a right hand. And Steve Erceg had clean, tight boxing, but just not enough of it. And not as effective as it should have been. Just clean, tight boxing while Brandon Moreno was moving forward, pushing a pace, landing big overhands. The few grappling exchanges they had, Brandon won those. The whole narrative, dude, Australia wrestling must be some of the worst wrestling on this planet. It has to be just dog shit trash, right? Like, it literally has to be. Because the whole narrative of Steve Erceg being, was he a national champ? Like, whatever the hell they say Steve Erceg is, as far as an accomplished Australian wrestler, dude, he's getting, Brandon Moreno was out wrestling him. Brandon Moreno was out wrestling him. Steve Erceg was supposed to be like this wrestler. That's who he is. Down under. Hey, I look like I'm from the Best Buy Genius Bar. I can wrestle. That accent, listen, guys, I've been drinking all day. I've been in the sun all day. You're not going to get a clean accent out of me, but I've been a very vocal Steve Erceg is an overrated hack guy for a long time. And he did look good in this fight, and he looks good in most fights. Even in the Pantoja loss, he looked good, but he lost that fight. In this loss, he looked good, but he lost this fight. What I will say is I don't think he's a hack. He's not an overrated just hack. I do think he's a little overrated. It's a weak weight class, so they rushed him to a title. He gets to the title, fails miserably. Then they bring him in. Kai Kara-France absolutely sparks the dude, knocks him out cold. And now here he is, third loss in a row, Brandon Moreno. This is another shit situation for the fighter. Because what the UFC is going to do, they're probably going to take Brandon Royval. And Brandon Royval is going to smoke Steve Erceg too. Steve Erceg might be like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the world, which is a wild accomplishment. You look at a globe, because the earth is round, not flat, Bryce. You look at a globe, and you could say every single fighter on this planet around my size, I'm better than all of them except like 6. That's an amazing accomplishment. The problem is the UFC makes sure you lose to every single one of those people, and then they'll cut you because you lost so many fights in a row. And that might be what happens next for Steve Erceg. They might literally give him Brandon Royval, and Brandon Royval will just outwork him the exact same way Brandon Moreno did, if not worse. And then Steve is on a 4-fight losing skid, and then you cut him. What the UFC is probably not going to do is everything I've been saying. The theme of this recap. Give him a couple easy wins. Give him a couple easy wins. There's nothing wrong with an easy win. Give him an easy win. Let him ride off. Let him have some success. Build him back up. They're not going to do that. They're going to run him into the ground. I don't know what you do with Brandon Moreno either. You could do the Pantoja rematch. They'll probably do Pantoja versus Kopp. You could do Moreno versus Kopp, but Pantoja's not injured. So I do think they should do Pantoja versus Kopp. I think they should book Pantoja versus Kopp next. If you want to fight Brandon Moreno again, great. If not, let him sit. Couple wins in a row. He's somebody that the UFC would like to have back at champion. He's a marketable guy from a country where you want a world champion. We got plenty of Brazilian champions. We don't need another one of them. You get yourself another Mexican champion, things could look pretty good. So I don't know what's next for Brandon Moreno. I'm curious what you guys think, what they should do with him. Do you think he should leapfrog Manuel Kopp because of their past, their history, because Brandon's a former world champion? Or do you think Manuel should get the next title shot and Brandon should fight somebody else or just sit out? I'm curious. Maybe they put Brandon on the redemption tour. Who else should he fight and beat? I don't know. But personally, if I'm picking, let Brandon Moreno sit. Just let him relax, recover. 2 nice wins in a row. No reason to rush any of this because I would rather Brandon be champion than Pantoja. Let him chill. Throw Kopp against Pantoja and see what happens. Then give Brandon the next crack. Guys, that's the breakdown. Let me know what you thought of this event. Overall, I thought UFC Mexico was a pretty good fight card. Way better than that trash UFC London was. And if you do want to get a couple of bucks from us to you, we have affiliate links. If you go to wewantpicks.com/bets and use any one of those affiliate links, you sign up, you make a deposit. We send you $50 as a thank you. You use the link. They're going to pay us. I'm going to slice off some of that money and give it right back to you. Very straightforward. easy process. That's WeWantPicks.com/bets. After you do that, go to the website, unlock all the picks, the bets, the tools, and everything else at WeWantPicks.com. You'll have access to every single pick, bet, and tool. One of those tools is the DraftKings Optimizer. This builds lineups for you at remarkable accuracy. We have a fight simulator that simulates fights 100,000 times. And all that access to the picks, the bets, the tools, and everything else will be for every single event for an entire month. Here's a sneak peek. You're going to get UFC Vegas 105 next week. You're going to get UFC 314. You're going to get the fight night. Where the hell is this fight night? It's not Kansas City. We just had. Is this the Des Moines, Iowa one? The Jamall Hill, Khalil Roundtree fight? WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. Unlock everything you could ever want or need heading into a fight week.